And I'm going to stream on Facebook in another minute after I grab this screen.
Hi.
Like the Brady Bunch here.
Hey, Diane, as we start, you want to grab 7 on the action items when we go?
Sure.
Here's the little guy.
Anybody want 8? Kevin,
Yeah, I'll do it. It's okay.
who grabbed 8?
Kevin.
All right, so all I need then is to drop off 9 on someone's lap. Who wants to be the bearer of bad news?
Well, I can do that, but I'd like to discuss it.
Yeah, well, no matter what, you got to discuss it. Motion goes on the table. I get a second, and it goes into discussion.
Yeah.
But it's up to you. We can, we can spread the wealth around.
Yeah.
We have 3 actionable items. I think.
Where's the agenda? What happened to the agenda?
I think you just pulled it down for.
Behind that screen.
for a second.
And it looks like we're recording and live on Facebook right now too.
Got it. So, yeah, Valerie, Matt, Adam, one of you can grab 9 when we get there, I suppose.
I can do it, or Matt. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Whoever wins the day.
Doesn't matter.
I will leave it to your devices. Who's more motivated to read the words on the page? That's all there is. All right. Well, it's 7:04, so let's call this thing to order if we can.
Okay, Mr. President, quick question. We're live on Facebook. Do we know when people are opting into Facebook to?
No, Facebook from our end, it's just a viewership. So, in fact, so that people know if anybody is actually watching on Facebook, because I don't see, you can pull up the Facebook page, I suppose, and look. But the one thing I would point out to anyone who does, and I may just do this from the beginning, that if you're watching on Facebook and you want to comment, then you need to come into the Zoom meeting, because there isn't comment on Facebook, and we're not doing public comment on Facebook. That happens here at the meeting. In the same way that if you were watching at home on a video screen versus being in the meeting, that's the difference between what is being on Facebook watching or being in this space of the Zoom space watching. This is the interactive space if you want it. So, having said that, I would ask to call this to order at 7:05. Ask for a roll call from the borough manager.
Yes, Vice President Diane Law,
Here.
Councilmember Kevin Collins,
Here.
Councilmember Matt Castiglia,
Here.
Councilmember Norma Greco,
Here.
Councilmember Adam McDowell,
Here.
Councilmember Valerie Renthaler,
Here.
Mayor Paul Gamrat,
Here.
and of course, Mr. President, you are here as well.
I still am, for all that that's worth. All right, so Happy New Year to everybody. And hopefully 2021 will be a year of rejuvenation, man. It'd be in a better space, better path. We got to get there though. That being the case, one of the ways that we get there is by listening to people who are smarter than us. That tends to be everyone who did not run for office, basically. I trust you're all smarter because that's how that works. That being the case, it is time for comments from our borough residents and taxpayers. Again, if you would like to comment, if you can please set in the participants, gives the ability to raise your hand. If you click raise your hand, I will call upon you. You have 3 minutes to speak, during which please begin by stating your name and address. This is for borough residents and taxpayers. That being the case, I will look around and see if anybody would like to raise their hand and has something to say today. I see Ken. Mr. Ken Belkey, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Didn't want to disappoint you. This time, I'm not going to make a comment. I have a couple questions just to ask, and you don't necessarily have to answer it right here, but at an appropriate time. others have called me too. We understand there's a meeting, not zoning, the committee that meets on Wednesday.
Planning.
And we're hearing that, first of all, I'm Ken Balky, 2007 Hampstead Drive, okay, for my location. The question is, Wednesday's meeting, I understand it's dealing with the Westinghouse site development. Can you share, because I couldn't find anything on the website what that meeting will entail. The second point is, given the major development that's going to be occurring, nothing like this has happened in 70 years, probably since the research center was built itself in the late 40s, early 50s. What process is the borough using to approve the project as things progress through? And then the third one is, some neighbors have asked me, and I was curious myself, I couldn't find anything on the website. Is there a Christmas tree pickup this year that we could put our trees on? So that's it. So it's 3 questions. Thank you.
So question number 1 and number 2, I'm going to combine and throw off my shoulders onto the solicitor's shoulders for a brief moment, and probably the engineer for some degree. Knowing that we just came into the conversation of what the Wednesday meeting will be, I would say first, if we can just answer briefly kind of purpose of planning, and then briefly, because the amount of pieces in this are 1,010 in terms of mechanism.
Mr. President, I was prepared to answer the question about the Christmas trees, but I'm not sure I know much about the land use and planning aspect of this.
Good, go Christmas tree.
I'll do the best I can though.
Thank you.
So to answer the questions about it, is a planning commission meeting. The planning commission does review and make recommendations on both the land development application, which is sort of the site plan itself, probably an easier way to refer to it, as well as the conditional use application that's pending before the borough. The conditional use application, the borough has 60 days within which to hold its first public hearing from the date that it's received. That's subject to obtaining extensions from the applicant as necessary and appropriate. It is their option as to whether or not they want to grant an extension. However, if they haven't, at least in the borough's mind, established that they meet the criteria in the ordinance, they would risk being voted down after a public hearing if they can't establish compliance. So sort of 2 aspects. The conditional use is the zoning portion. That's the portion where we have 60 days to hold a public hearing absent an extension. The second application is land use or land development, the site plan. That application must be acted on within 90 days of this coming planning commission meeting. So day 1 will be whatever, I think the 7th would be day 1. The borough has 90 days to act on that application. And obviously they go hand in hand. I mean, you need approval of both in order to construct the development as proposed. Most folks concentrate on getting they're often filed concurrently like this, but most folks, focus on getting the conditional use approval first. And sometimes it sort of lines up where you can get them both approved at the same time. Way too early to say at this point, whether that's going to happen in this particular situation. As far as additional process, right now, Gateway Engineers, the borough engineer, and its sub-consultants are conducting an initial review of that application packet, studies, plans, data, etc., that have been submitted to the borough. And what generally will happen is the borough engineer, I'm not going to put any pressure on Denny, but usually there's a review letter that goes out really close to the planning commission meeting. Sometimes it's the day of, sometimes it's a day or 2 before, and just sort of, again, kind of addresses the criteria and the code and the submission that's been provided by the applicant to determine, whether or not there's compliance, at least in the engineer's opinion, what items are outstanding, and where it appears that the application and the submissions deviate or do not comply with the code. Those comments are usually addressed as part of that planning commission meeting. So procedurally, what will happen normally will be the applicant will, at the planning commission meeting, do a presentation, discuss their submission. That's usually followed up by comments from the engineer and the consultants. There's generally some questions from the planning commissioners. And there's also an opportunity for the public to provide comments on the applications that are pending. Whether or not the planning commission is in a position to make a recommendation to approve or not approve really depends on how that meeting goes. And planning commission, keep in mind, is a recommending body. So their recommendation is not binding on council, but it is a necessary step under state law for the planning commission to review the applications and ultimately make a recommendation. It doesn't necessarily have to happen at the first meeting, especially if there are a number of outstanding items. Oftentimes what you'll see is the planning commission will table any action on the pending applications until there's additional submissions and there's additional reviews conducted by the borough's consultants.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And again, on the Christmas trees, what do you got on the Christmas trees?
I think it's every third Thursday is Christmas tree pickup, but I'll defer to the borough manager just to make sure. I could be mistaken on that.
Alex, any word on, is there Christmas? I've been so off kilter this year. Is there Christmas tree pickup this year?
Yes, it's a part of the contract that was negotiated with Waste Management. And we've been trying to update things on the web as possible. As far as the garbage schedule goes, it just continues like it did last year. So wherever you picked up last year, the same dates, the same bulk pickup date, is in there as well. I know a lot of people were calling about that today at the borough building.
Okay. So Christmas tree on bulk. So, all right, excellent. I'm going to move forward to Susan Stewart.
Hi, I'm Susan Sterrett. I'm at 1903 Hampstead Drive, where I live with my husband, Peter Spurties, the part of the year that I'm here. I just have a simple question. At the end of the last meeting that I attended, there was a statement about people looking forward to partnering with a developer. And I wanted to ask what's meant by that. Yeah, it was actually Jay, if you look at the recording, he said, I'm looking forward to partnering with. Now that, I'd like to know what that means. I mean, if there's a partnership with the borough between the developer, is that what you mean? If that's the case, then I guess I would like to see that discussed. And, if not, I'd just like to point out that the functions of regulating and partnering are different.
Sure. I think generally speaking, when anyone is kind of applying or doing something with us, we look at it as kind of working, whether I am looking and reviewing. So if the language was taken to mean that there was some kind of formal partnership, then I will, just overtly kind of just, reject that. It's not the intent, not what's meant. It's not the kind of space that we operate in. Further, in terms of our particular process, I think as you heard already, the way that the process goes is it's going to flow through, quite frankly, the engineers, and you'll hear it through our committees, who will each have their own space in kind of reviewing different sections of this on behalf of the citizens. The committees themselves will be open to having citizen participation. So I don't think there is any kind of partnership per se in the way that you may have perceived that to be.
Yeah, so I mean, this particular developer does have some partnerships, but they're different than not having one. So yeah, okay, thank you.
Not with anybody or anything at the borough.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I believe someone else had their hand up, but then they put it down. So yes, Mr. Bilby. All I see is Bilby@comcast.net. So if you unmute and state name, address, you're free to speak, sir. You got to unmute. I'm sure you're saying the most important thing, but unfortunately we can't hear it.
Good.
There
Okay,
you go.
can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
All right. I've become involved in a little bit by doing a lot of homework on my side of things. Some of you may have
Can you
received.
state your name and address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Murray Bilby, B-I-L-B-Y. My house is 2424 Churchill. It's near the corner of Holland and Churchill Road. I've done a little bit of homework. Some of you have gotten some of my initial letter, I believe. It was forwarded around. I've done additional background information. I found 4 similar projects that may assist us in our interactions with the developer. And I just wanted to let people know that I'm available to be involved in any projects. I am in town for most of this month. I'm available to discuss all the documents that I have, and I don't know if you can see them, but I have 3 white notebooks, all documented with websites and resources, and they're all available as Word documents if anyone else is interested. But I want to put a face with a name so that you know who I am. I intend to be involved with our borough in some way or another. So I'm logging in tonight just so that you're familiar with me, and I'll become familiar with you.
First, I appreciate both your willingness to help and as well as the time you've already put in and the time that you're committing to put in. You know, one of the things that I think council overall has spoken about is that we do have quite a wealth of talent within our community. And that's something that we're going to need the help with, quite frankly, moving forward. So we certainly will take you up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anybody else that wanted to comment? It's not a packed house today, so I can at least see everybody. So unless you are, I think we've got at least one that's on the phone. If you do want to comment, I will give kind of an extra second or two. You can unmute yourself, speak if you're on the phone, and if not, then we will move forward. Okay, hearing no further comments, we're going to move into kind of the regular reports, just making sure that people have received them, that you're acknowledging the drafts are out there. You can take a look at them, obviously have prepared yourself for the next meeting. I assume that there's no issue there with anyone. Hearing that there is not, I want to jump into a conversation around committee structure. I think one of the things that I was looking at coming into the new year is that really we haven't had kind of firm committee structure in some time. A while back, we had done kind of the 2 committee members, and those of us who are on committees know that just kind of blew up in our face. And then with 2 new people on council, while normally, you know, we would have a reorg meeting after an election in which in which council has been elected. It seems to me that while not officially a reorg, that we have just as many new council members as we would in a reorg space. And so it made sense to me to kind of look at this again, think about it, especially with everything that we have coming up at the Westinghouse space. To that end, I was able to sit down with Valerie and Matt. I thought fresh faces are probably the best way to really look at it. We had kind of gone through the structure, and for those of you who don't know, either are new or not on council, you know, the prior structures of council and committees have been an overarching kind of theme, and then 5 subcommittees with different members on each subcommittee. It was not a really kind of well thought out, I think, structure. And I've allowed it to ride out that way under me as well, so I will take just as much a hit as anyone else. But I think in rethinking it, it makes a lot more sense to have much fewer in terms of the number of committees, but then to have the structure of those committees to cover, you know, significant number of topics, so that we understand what the topics that are covered under the committees are. So that was kind of our thinking in the process. I don't know if everyone's gotten a chance to look at it or not. I'm hoping that you have. Ideally, what I would like to do is just make a couple of points and then stop my speaking and listen to council if there's something that needs to be significantly changed here. So just a couple of points I want to make. One is that the zoning, generally we have Diane on zoning. The only reason I don't have you on zoning there is I wasn't sure if you wanted all the workload or not, so I left it for your decision. So nothing else to be thought in that way. I realize that I've got you in management, government, and in infrastructure. So if you want to flip something around or do something different, I am open in either way, but don't for a second think it was anything other than that.
No, I think that we can just, you know, I need to sit down and think about it, talk to you, talk to the other people. Let's see, you know, what makes sense. As you know, my attitude is I don't care who does the doing as long as the doing gets done. So
I
that's,
recognize, and to that end though, I also don't want to overtax anybody, get putting you on too many.
I
hits.
appreciate that. Yeah,
I'm
happy to share.
Yeah, I tried to put kind of 2 per space. Norma, you'll see that you don't see yourself in those committees because when you scroll into, you see yourself once, not twice. Because when you scroll down into what we're calling liaisons, it's not really a liaison in that space, which is the school district, which was the committee that you were chairing. It still exists. We just moved its space.
Yeah, I see.
So down at the bottom, I have you, Diane, and Valerie. So I have you chairing that space. So that's down under. It's listed under liaisons because it's technically not our committee per
Yeah,
se.
that makes sense.
It's the consortium, but still there, still need you there. Still, the Lord knows. So that has not changed either. The primary changes have been kind of consolidating a few things that were listed as services, which were really financial oversight versus services. Particularly, we had legal services, engineering, and pension kind of split out before. And really, the function, I see you leaning in, Gavin. Our function committee-wise on legal service has been about whether or not we keep Gavin, but it was literally about hiring our solicitor, which we were very lucky to get, the outstanding, qualified, stupendous solicitor that we have. It's a new year, Gavin, go with it. But after that, it was really about overseeing the financial end of it, making sure we're not getting overbilled, making sure he's not going on vacation too many times.
Yes.
The same thing was true with the engineering services, Kevin, as you know, yes, other committees work with the engineers in a different capacity. So you're still, sitting in that infrastructure space that works with the engineers. But as a engineering services, it was really about financial oversight. And so we moved those along with the insurance and pension and general finance into finance and legal to try and create one financial space. To that end, if you look at we had public and safety, fire, police, emergency management, health and welfare originally was also structured to mean that financial oversight of the healthcare policies. I think given where we are and what is happening, that we need to rethink about what health and welfare committee, the role of government is in relation to our folks. I was just talking with Jay Costa last week after they had the conference call about the vaccination. And I said, so in Allegheny County, right, all these small municipalities, we don't have our own health departments, right?
Right.
So what's our vaccination plan, right? Churchill has one of the oldest populations, right? So there's a role for us in that space under public safety that's different than I think the way we initially had health and welfare put out. Infrastructure, I think, is exactly what it is. The magic of sanitary and sewer systems, the roads and the buildings, a heavy lift for sure. No doubt about it. And then, management and government relations and oversight. So that was the general thinking. I don't think I need, this isn't cemented now. Again, this is for discussion, but I wanted you to understand what I was thinking about, what Matt and Valerie were thinking about when we had the discussion. And now I talk too much. I will turn it over for anyone who has any comments about what they looked at.
Okay, Jay, one
Yes,
quick thing on the liaison committees, the Allegheny Southeast Tax Collection Committee.
Yes, I'm scrolling my way down. I'm with you.
Okay, with Dave being part of it?
I see it.
Okay. So we may want to change.
Yeah, I think that's the kind way of saying there was an oversight. We have someone who no longer is on council or lives in Churchill listed as our liaison. So I appreciate your time.
Did he move back?
Yeah,
I'd love to. Wish you would.
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate the kind nature of your way of saying it. So yeah, we will need to change the rep for county tax committee.
Right.
That's not a very active committee. I attended the one back in December, but it's worthwhile attending. So,
do I have a taker? That's the question of where we're at.
Adam, I hate to volunteer you, but it kind of fits in with the COG meeting process. So,
well, if you think that it fits in with that, I guess I could go ahead and do that.
So Kevin just threw Adam right under that bus.
That's what he did, yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Just volunteered them.
And Jay, if you could just talk a little bit about the ad hoc committees as far as the Hillwood thing.
Yeah, I'm about to get into that. Right.
Okay.
Right after we finish the main committees, we broke out the Hillwood space. So here's the thinking, and if we're good here, again, take your time. If you have other comments you want to make, other things come up, feel free to kind of jump in. We then moved on to recognizing that the current committee structure, we have a pressing need, right? An immediate pressing need. And so we have to kind of divide this workload out so that it's actually being reviewed and seen by council. I think there's no way that we're going to be able to legitimately kind of go through all of these reports in a quality fashion if I just leave it to its own devices or tell everyone, yeah, go through all of them, right? And so let me start by saying, as Matt brought up kind of as we were going through this, and he's 100% correct, that the committee structures for the ad hocs does not mean that if you have comment, concern, or something else that you'd like to submit, that you cannot submit it if you're not on that committee, right? It does prevent in the meeting space that you're going to show up, because then we have the quorum sometimes, not always, right? Only in one, but would have to be scheduled out to make sure that we're not having too many committee people there. Ideally, it's to ensure that we have core people responsible for core reporting, right, back to council so that it's getting done, right? To kind of Diane's point, don't really care who's doing the doing as long as it's getting done kind of space. That is the mindset behind this. We went through and tried to structure it in a way that things were related. It's just, and again, you could probably sort these 1,000 different ways, quite frankly. But between the three of us, this was just the kind of space that we had that, the idea of transit parking, complete streets just is, it's that, right? It's street related, vehicle related. That's kind of where we're at. Impacts, so visual noise, sound, noise, light, infrastructure, again, sanitary sewer again. And quite frankly, this is part of the reason I was looking at that. It's a heavy lift. I know it's a heavy lift. Between the sanitary, the storm, I see it's duplicated. That's my mistake. And the air quality. And then the last one, just to understand what the kind of breakout of that last space is. So the first three are really reports that we are receiving that we know the engineers are going through, that we know we need to go through. We can have community members participate in these committees, and in the last one, but we know we have kind of substantive reading and reporting to go through. The last one, if you recall, we talked to them about kind of looking at sustainable design and what that would mean. And they kind of gave us hey, here's some nice ideas. Mm-hmm. So really, in a bullet point, one-page fashion, right? So the last one is more about us giving to them more than us reviewing from them, right? And so I know it's something that was, important to me. I know it's something that was important to Diane, and Valerie really wanted to be part of that. And so that's where that kind of sustainable design, the lead kind of building concept, where it's going, where it's coming from, and what we're looking at. So the end game of this is that Alex would then kind of divvy back out to the responsible committees the reports, right? So that we're able to kind of go through them as a group, each committee, and you'll see that we have staff on each of the committees, right? So we're not just looking for this to be council by itself. We're trying to put the relevant staff people in the spaces that they can assist us, and that they can provide valuable input. Most of the time in the past, as we know, the committees have just been council people in their own space. Again, this is something that is far too important for us to miss any opportunity to have, skill at the table, right? And so what we want to do is then divide out kind of as quickly as possible, quite frankly, the relevant reports, and then look at timelining out when the committees will report back to council, right? Have a written report back to council that allows council, the rest of council, if you're not on that committee, to be able to make a reasonable evaluation. Doesn't mean you can't, take the extra time, read it to yourself, come to your own conclusions. I hope you'll have at least some skimming of all of them. But realistically, the deep dives are expected out of the committees themselves. That comes back. Council now has kind of knowledge on all the relevant bases. That combined with obviously the role of the engineer and the solicitor, and I think we're in a good space to have at least semi-sound decisions. So that's the thinking in terms of the ad hoc committees. And again, if somebody is really just wants to be in a different space, and we can have that conversation. What you'll see is it's kind of two of us on each committee, right? And then the one site plan has 3 because of the kind of direct space that it's in. So that's where we are in the ad hoc. If that answers questions, again, same thing. I'm open to whatever discussion we're going to have about it. So any comment, discussion on either of those?
I think it's a good idea, getting back to the committee structure, Jay, especially with this Hillwood project. You have to pinpoint.
It is too important and too heavy of a lift to leave to its own devices. So anything else from folks on that space? So
hey, Jay,
yeah.
Is this the part where I volunteer Adam for all of it?
See, now Matt's coming with a sense of humor, right? I appreciate that, and I'll take that as a yes. Yes, it is. But the other thing I would say is I've run this through the kind of council lens. Mr. Mayor, there is a space, because you don't have to adhere to the sunshine space. You're able to be on any of the committees that you'd like to participate in. Obviously that's afforded to you. I'm just looking at it through the sunshine space, but let's talk about that and make sure that we've got you in place, because we need your assistance there as well.
Sounds good.
So, and that I think that's it for me for committee space right now, unless I am missing anything. All right, any other? I know I talked a lot, so any thoughts on it? Anything I screwed up?
No.
Perfect.
We need an organization. We've got it.
All right.
One quick thing, Jay. I think it's important that any comments from the public should be distributed to those ad hoc committees, okay, so they can assess them and maybe answer the people back. So
yeah, let me make a second suggestion in terms of quite frankly, I think each committee can make some of this determination of their own accord. But what I was going to say is I think we should probably, put it out to the public that if, you're interested in participating in a committee to send in kind of your resume type thing, and we can use some extra help. I don't want a free for all per se.
right.
I I don't think that's helpful either.
Right.
But I think if individuals want to participate in a particular committee and they bring something to the table, it is worthwhile for us to have particular expertise. So what I would suggest is if we wanted to maybe post something on the website indicating that if you're interested in participating in a committee, to provide your resume, and then we could take a look and see if there's a space that we can assign you to. It doesn't guarantee that someone's going to be on these committees. I also want to be clear about that. It just means that, you know, if you have a skill set that is something that we value, or if you're really taking some time and invested into this, and I think we've heard that from some individuals, that, you know, we want to make sure that there's a place at the table for our residents, you know, that their voice is heard. So whether it's heard through comment where we are submitting those comments to the proper committee, or whether that's heard, you know, as a, you know, non-voting committee member, you know, quite frankly, because at the end of this, any recommendation based on things for the committee, you know, is going to be council. So I would pose that as well. I think is a couple different ways to address that. But I agree with you, Kevin, that certainly comments that come in absolutely should be referred. Comments that come in, quite frankly, should go to, you know, within OneDrive to all of us. And then, you know, if we feel there's a germane issue that needs to be brought to a committee, then that's a second level for it.
Jay, is there a timetable?
That's the next thing that I need to square out with the two men on my left that you can't see. Actually, the two men and the woman on my left. Yeah, that's you. That's the solicitor, the borough manager. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Dennis, but not as much of the timetable. I just need you to deliver. But I think we can square that out before the next meeting, to have a squared out before the business meeting, to have a firm timetable for the committees to be able to get the work done and report. Excellent question, by the way. Anything else?
Okay.
Yes.
Just on this, two things. I guess one, I would say, you know, if people are going to be submitting or residents are going to submit, that's fantastic. Maybe try to indicate, you know, if there's certain one or two areas, kind of same kind of thing, 2 committees maybe max, just so we don't get too many people. You know, same thing, that too many hands, or, you know, I guess too many cooks in the kitchen could be a problem as well. So maybe try to indicate your kind of top 2 areas or 3 areas you'd want to be involved.
And again, Matt, as I said, submission doesn't guarantee that you're going to be placed on a committee. And I think that's something in terms of the language of what goes onto the website that I'll speak with Alex about. But yeah, I would think that, quite frankly, if there's a particular space that you want to be at the table, it's probably good to know that up front. But in either case, I think we'll make sure that it's put out in a way that you know, residents understand. We want to have people at the table, but we also just can't have just, you know, I want to be on the committee, so you're on the committee, you know.
And the only other thing I was going to say, Jay, is maybe we should discuss, you know, some type of process. You know, Kevin, I agree that we want to try to, you know, respond to people that have comments, but I also know that, you know, we do get some lengthy comments, so I'm not sure where that comes in.
So in terms of responses, I kind of talked to folks before, and I'll just kind of restate this for everyone. You know, there isn't an obligation in the space of responding to the emails as they come in. And the reason I say there isn't an obligation, because what we want to do is acknowledge that we've received them, right? And so as the borough manager gets them in, he can acknowledge receipt. Then, quite frankly, if somebody has a particular comment that they want to have a conversation about, then we need to encourage them to come to the meeting. What I don't want to do is burden either the borough manager or, quite frankly, the council. You know, if suddenly you get 500 emails, well, what, you're only going to respond to 300 of them? Which 300 are you going to respond to? How are you going to respond? So I think, as the matter of process, as emails come in, we will acknowledge their receipt. We will, you know, it will be known that they were passed on to council. They were encouraged to attend the meeting if they would like to hear, you know, or directly comment to council themselves. But I don't think we are in a space to start writing emails back and forth in response. It's not the kind of best way. But we do want to make sure that they know that their email was received, that it is being forwarded, that council is reviewing it. Because the other thing is I don't want people to think that they're not being heard. I think that would also be an important space.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I
Hey,
wanted to mention
Jay,
for council too, sorry if I just interrupted somebody,
No,
but
go.
keep in mind that it really information at this point should be more of a one-way street going to the borough and to council. I mean, your role, and it's very key that you keep this in mind, is that during the conditional use hearing, it's going to be up to council to serve as almost as a judge in a quasi judicial capacity to make a determination based on what's presented in this submission also, but also at the hearing. And that the testimony that you'll need to take into consideration and use as part of your decision will be that information, that testimony, that evidence that you received during the conditional use hearing. So you just want to be a little careful. Number one, council shouldn't be commenting on an application that's pending, especially when we haven't even started the hearing yet. And then two, keep in mind what you ultimately decide, and the decision will need to be based on the evidence that's submitted at the hearing, the evidence and testimony. So, I think it's okay to sort of dig into some of these because it's such a massive amount of information to start digesting, to do this background work. And there's no problem with these committees. It's just, you just have to be a little bit careful in this context. It's a little bit of an unusual role that council has in conditional use as opposed to maybe some other situations. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, dude.
Should we not be passing any judgment as we do this?
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to indicate a position one way or another. I mean, you may have in the back of your mind now be leaning one way or the other, but you haven't heard any of the evidence yet. Technically, I mean, the hearing hasn't started, so it's your job to keep an open mind and your job to make an objective determination based on what's submitted in the way of testimony, evidence, and the actual submissions, the application, the plans, etc., to determine whether or not they meet the code. So that's something that I think sometimes the members of the public sometimes struggle with, because a member of council, it's not their decision it's not up to them to say, well, do I think this is a good idea? Do I think it's a bad idea? You're purely applying the evidence that's submitted to you against what's in the code. And if it turns out that they comply with it, you don't have a choice but to approve it. But if they don't comply with it, then it's your right, it's your duty to turn down the application. And we'll need to be very clear on the reasons, if you do turn it down, as to why it's being turned down. So that's, and we'll be able to talk about that. That's another thing that we haven't really discussed much publicly, and certainly not privately, but quasi judicial deliberations. So after you've heard the testimony and evidence, after the hearing's closed, you are permitted to discuss have those discussions in executive session. It's one of those rare situations where you can deliberate about a matter in executive session. So just keep that sort of in the back of your mind as well.
Thanks, Kevin.
Hey, Gavin.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry, question. While we're reviewing, these numerous documents that were submitted and going through this, if there is questions, or information that appears to be missing, are we allowed to ask for clarification during this time?
You are, but really, to be honest, a lot of the heavy lifting should be done by the planning commission and through the planning commission process. I mean, by the time the planning commission, it's sort of a tool to do a lot of that heavy lifting. And while, again, it's okay for you folks to educate yourselves as to what's been submitted, I think what will really be the guiding factor as far as what additional information is needed is going to come from your reviewing consultants. And it's certainly okay if you have a question, you're reviewing something, let Alex know in particular. Alex can make sure that information gets to whoever it needs to get to, whether it's Dennis, whether it's the chair of the planning commission, so that whatever information that is needed is obtained. But again, the planning commission forum is probably the appropriate space within which to try to make sure that all that information has been submitted, so that by the time that we're initiating that public hearing before you folks, that those questions have been answered, at least as far as, have the submissions been, completed? Is there anything missing? That kind of thing.
And let me kind of help folks understand that the purpose of this in terms of the Hillwood space is for us to be able to digest the information. right? It's just a lot of information. And so in order to get through all of it, the easiest way to do that is to divide and conquer that information, and then to be able to provide kind of summaries back to council as a whole on what the information is. The purpose is not, as I think Gavin has, once again rightly said, it's a new year, man. Is not for us to review the information with the purposes of coming to a conclusion on it outside of what was submitted, not whether it's good or it's bad or it meets or it doesn't meet. At this point, it's here's the information, here's what they provided us, here's what I looked through, here's what it stated, right? That's the purpose of the ad hoc space, just to kind of put that in perspective for everyone as well. Anything else on, Diane, did you have something? I know.
No, I just wanted to suggest that, if you think about what we're doing as purely information gathering and processing, as opposed to position taking, that I think that'll help people stay on the right track. And maybe, you want to start, I would be starting with a series of questions. What do I need to know about this? And, maybe, what's the state of the art on something or another, but all of that has to be funneled exactly, as Gavin said, that all has to be funneled into the formal process.
Yeah, that's how Dennis goes to Disney World when COVID's over, right? Don't be surprised if we check our Facebook when this thing's all over and there's Dennis on Disney World. You're like, is that Gavin next to him?
Right.
And such is the world. But yes, I fully agree with that viewpoint. Anything else on committee structure to move forward?
I had a question, Jay. Would you be going over the liaison organization stuff? I don't think we talked about that when we met the other day.
We didn't. And I know that Alex had put together kind of the list of the current liaison space. Quite frankly, we've got to just fill a lot of these. Is how this plays out. And so what I'm going to say, rather than the way that committee structures are kind of preset, I'm like, here we are. This is much more of if there's a blank space and you would like to fill your name in it, please tell me. If you don't know what it is, we can talk about it. There's a number of these that we still need to go through. I think I will jump into Connect.
Good.
Yeah, I will take Connect. So Connect is a kind of multi-municipal meeting in which a bunch of different municipalities talk about everything from best practices in zoning to how to deal with wet weather. It's just a meeting space of municipalities where we can get some kind of best practice space. Our previous council person had introduced us to it, and I don't think we quite got what we could have out of it. And so I think Diane and I have talked about the potential of this, of talking to other municipalities and saying, hey, what are you doing? Let me get a copy of that, and so I am happy to jump into the Connect space. We don't need to fill this out right now, just so you know, but what I will do is I'll talk to folks, and if you have a particular interest, you're not sure what something is, you can kind of shoot me that conversation and we can go through it. Borough Association is exactly that. They do have a nice in a non-COVID space, they tend to have a nice annual kind of gala space. I've never gone to it. So that's on the table. The magic of Three Rivers wet weather. It's Dennis highly recommends it. Can't talk enough about that. The EMS really isn't much of a role, but again, these are just kind of we have them, they exist, they come, they serve our community, we pay them a small amount, quite frankly. And so we need someone to be part of that. Zoning hearing is a lift, can be a lift. So I think that's one to give some thought about. have we had a real liaison for emergency management? You know, we have our own, you know, we have our emergency manager, but I don't know that we've had a,
No, I don't think so.
so that may kind of be a bit of dead space.
Mhm.
So they're open. Think about it, take a look at them. Again, I don't need this by, you know, today or tomorrow, but if there's something that you want to jump in, I think we do need somebody on the Borough Association. We do need, in terms of the more pressing ones, you know, wet weather has value, and you know, land bank's always there. You know,
Well, I've been sitting on the land bank one, Jay.
I know. That's what I'm trying. I see what, you know, in the magic land bank space. I'm like, you know, if you want to break, man, this is your chance. This is your chance.
Well, we have Natalie listening in, so it's
That's okay. You know, I'm just looking to get new folks in new spaces. So
okay.
but if I can engage some folks, I think it's not going to hurt us. You know, you have been a true advocate in the Churchill space for land bank, Kevin. So, you know, I will say that right up front. You know, this is as its own note.
Jay, this is I'm sorry.
No, please. You know, I talk
Yeah,
too much.
this is more of a technical question, but can we set up a Zoom meeting through a Churchill account or something? Because I can't use my PIT account for
Yeah. You're
other
talking about
reasons.
for the purposes of, like, you know, the Woodland Hills School disconversion. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Talk to Alex. We can set that up.
yeah, because I can't use my PIT account on other.
No, I understand. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I violate federal law if I use my work account for stuff.
Yeah, I can't use my account there. So
Actually,
okay,
that
that's
has to do with all of our committee meetings as well. You know, we're going to have Zoom meetings for all our committee meetings. So the whole thing.
exactly. So I think we need to have access to an account.
So a couple different spaces in this, just to kind of clarify. One, in the committee space, you can probably run most of those through Teams. Just to
okay.
So TeamSpace does very well for small meetings, right? If it is, for instance, just the listed committee members, everybody has a Teams account. You can literally just call people in, right? The Zoom meeting becomes necessary when we move to kind of larger groups, right? So I don't know that you even want to do necessarily Zoom over Teams in some of these spaces. You're going to have better access to your files during a Teams meeting versus a Zoom meeting, as it's natively Office. So I would suggest that unless you are having a larger number of people, that you keep it within the team space. That's just my suggestion. So I think it'll be easier for all involved, and you can do it yourself pretty quickly. You know, just, you know, pull up your Teams and boom. Yeah, you can put it on a calendar. You know, the best thing in terms of Teams, just for you, you know, you're all trying to sort Zoom and Teams, is you can just make the calendar event and everyone just clicks join and they're there. And that's it. And so as a side option.
We'll get some technical assistance from our office friends.
I'm saying all this and I realize that every word I'm saying, Chris, is like, you know, this feels like, it doesn't feel like someone's just happen. This is not magically going to happen, is it? That's fair, Krista. That is fair. I apologize for setting the assumptions and then knowing that I, you know, left the grenade and left the room. So, but yes, it works fairly easy. And if Krista doesn't hate me,
I think I'll have to make a call to the tech department on.
We're always here. No worries.
Yeah, I can't open my binder. Safari won't let me do that. So
tech support.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that is going to take us through that section then. Appreciate everybody having the quality conversation on this. All right, so let's move into our options for tax collector vacancy. how are we gonna fill this? I always look to the solicitor for the explanation in this, even though it was provided in red.
So as you'll recall, the current tax collector submitted his resignation effective, what is it, January 31st?
It is.
Mr. Graziani? Is that
Yes.
correct?
It is.
So, you know, council will have an opportunity, right? They have an opportunity to fill that vacancy with another tax collector as one of the options. Tax collector, I think the current salary is somewhere around $5,000-ish. So that's one option. That's probably the most straightforward option to fill the vacancy. Someone steps in, takes over at the same salary, and finishes out the term. Alex, when is Mr. During's term up?
It would be at the end of this year, so we would need somebody to, run in the spring and fill the position for next year.
Okay, so that's one option. Another option is, and what many smaller municipalities or municipalities even larger, significantly larger than Churchill, have been doing, is assigning a third-party tax collector as a deputy collector. And kind of the big ones in this space are Jordan Tax Service and Keystone Collections. I think are probably the two that I see most often. And the way that generally works is, number one, that right now that third party can be deputized, but they cannot serve as the actual tax collector. The Borough Code requires that it's an actual natural born person who serves as a tax collector. So what's on your agenda, I think, for this evening, or maybe it's on for next week. No, it is on this week. Is that in that scenario, you wouldn't want to pay twice, right? You're going to be paying that third party tax collector to step in and actually do the work. So what you would essentially do would be to reduce the salary of the tax collector position to a nominal amount, so that essentially you have what's effectively a figurehead tax collector who really, still has to get the bonding, still has to officially serve in the role, but all the actual work is done by the deputy tax collector. You may not have people lining up around the block to take the $10 tax collector gig and just serve as a figurehead tax collector. So that leaves sort of another sort of piece of this pie, in that if the tax collector position stays vacant for 30 days, then the council can appoint the borough manager. And Alex and Krista, if I'm screwing any of this up, I think you guys have been working with David maybe a little even more closely than I have on this, but just wave your hands if it looks like I'm going offline here. So I think that in that situation, you could appoint the borough manager after 30 days have passed. So that would be the end of February, beginning of March. And then the borough manager could deputize or appoint as deputy a third-party tax collector. Now, the kind of the tricky part about all that is that if we don't get a deputy tax collector appointed prior to this January 31st resignation date, we have a month where there is no tax collector. And it turns out that taxes get paid in February, certain types of taxes. I think there's a school district installment tax that is either due at the end of January, but probably will trickle over somewhat into February. So I think one of the things that's been discussed is potentially approaching the tax collector, the current tax collector, to see if he'd be willing to deputize the third party collector prior to his resignation, to become effective essentially upon his resignation, so that during that interim sort of 30-day time period before either council appoints a new person to be tax collector at the lower $10 rate, or B, that 30 days expires and the borough appoints the borough manager as a tax collector, then we would have in the background someone actually physically available to collect taxes. If that doesn't happen, I think as a practical matter, it's going to be up to the office staff to kind of collect and hold and maintain the taxes, just because we're not going to turn the money away, and it's got to get done still. So it would be cleanest if we could get that deputy tax collector appointment done upon Mr. During's resignation, to be effective, essentially February 1st. I know that both Krista and Alex, I think Krista being the point person, has been in touch with these third-party collectors. I think they are willing to perform the service that they do in all these other communities. They have, situations to deal with the bonding that's required. They provide indemnification for the borough staff and the tax collector to ensure that, the responsibility is on them to actually do the collections. And so that's a lot. So if someone has a question or two, I'm happy to try to answer them, but I think that's it in a nutshell. Alex and Krista, feel free to jump in.
So couple of things right up front. One, in terms of the third party, what would be the cost for the third party? And my understanding is that we would anticipate a kind of more robust collection. So just explain to me what the cost would be versus what the kind of current salary is.
I'm going to defer to Krista on that, because I know she actually has the proposal. It may be in your packet, I'm not sure, but my understanding was that there would likely be some net savings if going that route, but I'll defer to Krista.
I like to have it said publicly so people can hear it.
All right, I will take the baton from here then. So in the binder, in the second binder, there's a layout of what each scenario would come down to. Currently, how it stands, we have Dan does the main collection. We pay him. We also pay Jordan Tax Service to print and send out our annual bills. And then we have to pay for the bonding of him and the deputy tax collector. And then we also have to provide office supplies to do so. That comes to about $12,000 on an annual basis. If we were to keep an appointed tax collector who directly handles tax collection, that would be slightly over $12,000, given that we would have to endure new training for that tax collector and the costs associated with that. Then we have the option of going to Jordan, and there is, whether we go with a newly appointed tax collector just to serve as a figurehead at a salary of $10 in a year, or the borough manager would assume the position after 30 days of vacancy, comes out to about $8,000. And at our currently 1,576 bills that we send out. If we go with Keystone, it is slightly lower at about $7,600 under both scenarios. Just the payment structured a little differently. And then Keystone and Jordan both have some nuances to their collection too, such as office locations and days in the office.
Excellent. So again, for clarity, it is a slight savings, in moving to a third party versus having the individual. Second point, so the solicitor had mentioned asking the current tax collector if he would be willing to deputize someone for that interim month. Who's asking him that?
I've been having those conversations with him, and Mr. During seems to have some amenability to that and is open to the concept. Of course, as Gavin mentioned earlier, the concern of liability going beyond when he is no longer serving would be a concern to anyone in that situation. But I think as he's asking the questions, he's becoming more understanding of the answers and okay with it. But I just want to continue on in this process. Tonight, you would be considering the code change for the salary portion. And I think I'll just keep going back with Dan, and hopefully by January 31st, before he leaves, he'll deputize the firm of your wishes, the third party of your wish, because that's part of it too. He would need guidance from the council to deputize that party that you're willing.
Understood.
Alex, do you or Krista or both of you have a preference as far as Keystone and Jordan?
There is no preference when it comes to either. They both have positive aspects to them, such as Keystone. Keystone handles a lot of our other tax collections, such as EIT and LST. They also have a office in Penn Hills, so our residents really enjoy paying their taxes in person. So that's a positive as well. That's just a short drive away. Jordan, however, is our delinquent real estate tax collector, so they're very familiar with our process as it is currently, and they also serve other communities within the Woodland Hills School District.
And
we pay our wage. I'm sorry. We pay our wage checks to Keystone, correct?
That is correct. They're our current EIT collector, and next year they'll be our LST collector as well.
Okay.
And so just to walk through that very last potential scenario. So Gavin, remind me, we get to the 31st and he doesn't deputize somebody.
Well, council has its meeting in February where you'd have the option to appoint a replacement, but you can't appoint the borough manager until that 30 days has elapsed. So if you wanted to, by voting on the ordinance tonight, you're changing the compensation from whatever it is to $10 going forward, effective as of the vacancy. So you don't change Mr. During's compensation, but effective as of his resignation, the new compensation is $10 a year. So again, if there would be no deputy, you would have essentially no tax collector technically during that month.
We just need to have somebody who's willing to do it effectively. As long as we've got somebody, it's not a problem.
Right. Or again, nobody. And if you get if you get a deputy tax collector in there, then it may even be more simple to have the borough manager handle it.
Right.
Effective March 1st.
Understood.
Yeah,
Okay.
my question is, if there is someone who's deputized and it's a citizen, what about their protection and liability during that period?
Run that past. So the deputy would be the third-party tax collector in any of these.
Okay.
Yeah. Now a new appointee who steps in and becomes the new Mr. During at $10 a year,
right,
would be indemnified by the third-party tax collector who's also bonded.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the way that would work. So yeah, if you find someone who's willing to willing to finish out this term and is willing to run again and is willing to keep that same arrangement, that's done in a lot of places. I was actually a little surprised when we dug into this a little bit, because I said to one of my colleagues, do people actually sign up for this job of $10 a year and where they don't really do anything and they have to be bonded? And apparently they do. So you have some civic-minded folks out there who are willing to step up and do what they need to do. So it's pretty great.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the story in that space.
Oh, I would just want to add one thing, Jay, and that is that, again, the impact of the Hillwood project. I don't know how much more complexity there's going to be for whoever is collecting the taxes when we're talking about that kind of operation. So that's beyond my experience.
I wouldn't think that'll be too burdensome. I mean, there's going to be some change orders probably as the project goes on, maybe some assessment changes, but most of that's done administratively through the county. I mean, there is some minimal paperwork I think that's required, but because it's all one block and lot, I don't think it'll be too bad.
Okay.
Is it understood that this third party will also be assuming the tax collection for the school board?
You see Alex nodding his head.
Well,
Yeah.
Dan does both now.
It would function just like the tax collector serves as for the borough and collects the school taxes. They would be collecting the school taxes as well.
Okay, so the school committee is going to go along with our choice of third party?
The school would prefer, if you can imagine, the district has 11 or 12 tax collectors now. And the more professionalization and uniformity in the collection is something they're interested in.
Okay. All right.
Krista,
Yes,
question. So both firms offer online payments. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay, so with COVID and everything going on, if people want to do things online, there's certainly that option, which we don't have right now. The other question I had is, I know you and I were talking some specifics. Was there any synergies by going with either Jordan or Keystone? Since they're both kind of already doing services for us, that would get us some additional savings beyond what we saw?
So there is one opportunity for savings with Keystone. If we were also to move delinquent tax collection, real estate tax collection to them, they were willing to offer a proposal that included even further reduced rates for current real estate tax collection. However, I cannot confirm that their delinquent tax collection would be less than we currently pay through Jordan. I'm still waiting to hear back on that. Otherwise, we really don't really have much negotiation when it comes to Keystone as them being our wage tax collector, given that the EIT rates are negotiated through the Southeast Tax Collection Commission, and the LST honestly isn't a overwhelming amount. It's not a real bargaining chip in our favor. Otherwise, it's just, you know, it's 12 in one hand, a half dozen in the other. It's really what comes down to a preference overall.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? I appreciate the understanding. Obviously, we have an action that we can take in terms of setting the code in a way that it addresses this, the ordinance rather. So that will be number 7 as it comes up. Now we know what you're dealing with there, and that would be moving it to that $10, so that irrespective of who the third party was, or the tax collector working with a deputy, that we would set that amount moving forward. This moves us to discussing appointing Krista as the borough treasurer via resolution. Turns out we do need to have a borough treasurer, I believe is the case there. And so who better than Krista? Any comment or conversation regarding this from Krista or Alex or Gavin in terms of the fact that we don't have anything necessary to say other than that? I think it's pretty basic.
Is this in addition to Krista's work now?
Previously, Sandy was the borough treasurer, and
Okay.
kind of she still sort of is, because
Yes.
Oh, I see.
so there won't be any additional wage. There won't be any additional other than she'll just serve as the treasurer as Sandy served as the treasurer when she worked for the borough.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question in that space? Okay, so that will be done via resolution. I don't think there's much of an issue there. That moves us on to number 7, which is planning commission space. So we got.
Just to get out in front of this one, if someone is going to appoint an individual, please place that individual's name in the slot of the motion rather than reading an individual.
Do we have an individual who is confirmed to want this job?
Are we discussing this first, or am I making a motion?
Well, it depends. And what I mean by that is the discussion is that you know, unfortunate series of events, you know, but there is an opening available, and we need to get these filled. The motion, if you want to discuss individual or the person, right, it would happen inside of the motion.
Oh, okay. Well, if we're just discussing in general,
I
guess-
think it's, Diane, if you don't mind, I think we have a couple of people that we should consider.
Sure.
Maybe we should table this until next Monday.
That's, you know, I'm feeling that, first of all, we just lost our planning commission member on Christmas Day. And I'm a little uncomfortable just on that basis of moving forward this quickly. But secondly, we know that there is a tremendous amount of complexity that these folks on the planning commission are going to have to process. We also know that our consultants are still in the process of reviewing what has been submitted and so on. So I'm feeling personally that we should dig into this a little more, better define what materials it is people are going to have to process, and perhaps keep that advertising for this appointment going a little longer. And then I feel that the council needs to interview whoever it is that we would choose.
I would just throw out there, and certainly that's your prerogative. But there is probably the biggest planning commission meeting in the history of the modern history of Churchill coming up in 2 days. So if there's a way to have a full slate there, certainly that would be optimal. But I can understand why you don't want to rush into a decision like that.
I can't imagine anybody would be sitting there and not abstain from the vote. I mean, it's kind of pointless. They wouldn't have, if we appointed them tonight, they would have 1 day basically to prepare for that meeting. I wouldn't, I mean, personally, I wouldn't put anybody in that kind of position. I think we can take a little longer to do the right thing. And
Diane,
we'll have a quorum, and which brings me to, I'm assuming that I'm not going to be taking an active part on Wednesday evening. Is that correct, Gavin?
That's correct. Yes. Since you're sitting in that quasi judicial capacity, you can certainly be there to form the quorum.
Right.
But we wouldn't want you to take part in the discussion because we want to make sure that you're there to be actually making, having the key vote, rather than, don't want to set you up for a potential recusal.
Oh, no, I have no interest in doing that. We do have 3 people, so we have an uneven number who will be actively participating Wednesday night as planning commission members. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I think it's really important that we take a little more time to do this.
Diane, I agree, a little more time, but we need to get somebody on this board. I don't know whether the rest of the council has reviewed the 3 resumes. Okay. In my mind, I have a preference, but I agree to have them in place by Wednesday would probably be difficult, but I would like to get somebody appointed no later than next Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So let me offer this. I can certainly understand Diane's point and Gav, our solicitor's point, but I think realistically, Diane does have a strong point that appointing someone to turn around the next day isn't necessarily, yes, it fills a space, but it doesn't necessarily take any action.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, I agree where Kevin's coming from, that it shouldn't take a significant amount of time. So what I would propose is that we table this till next meeting, that we be prepared to vote next meeting on a member of the planning committee. As far as the passing of Mr. Kirshner, who's a friend down my street, it is tragic and very difficult for a lot of folks. But in the space of strictly compartmentalizing, in the space of work to do, I don't think that slows down our need for an individual. So I'll put it there, and I would offer that we just kind of table this out until it doesn't require a motion table. Nothing. It's not on the table right now. There's been no motion brought up. So I think if we can commit to reviewing and having an appointment by Monday, I think it's probably in our best interest.
I'd like to just say that I agree with your comments, Diane. And one of the things I wanted to bring up, Kevin, you mentioned that there's 3. I know of 2, and then I know of a third that was kind of iffy or wanted some additional clarification. Did anyone speak with that person and offer that additional clarification? Do we have 3 actual people that are interested in the spot, or is it just the 2?
Alex, I don't know if you've spoken with Dan Zadel after receiving his message. Dan is the chair at this point of the zoning committee.
Yeah, he would not be able to serve in both. So he'd effectively, if he was appointed, be resigning from the planning commission to serve on the planning. He'd serve from the zoning hearing board.
Yes, so we'd have to appoint new people to the zoning hearing board, or a new person to the zoning hearing board. And, on that level, we can have a separate conversation. But Gavin, you had mentioned, about the zoning hearing board. I think in any event, when we get, if Dan is the one who ends up doing this, we need to get another person for the zoning hearing board. And then I think it's time for us to have an orientation session with the zoning hearing board, who, as far as I know, two of them have never been in a hearing. So it's good time for us to get that job done and do that right.
And if you don't have I can't recall if there's a real estate lawyer or a zoning lawyer on that zoning hearing board, but I've said for a few years now that it'd probably be a good idea to get those folks a solicitor, so that when they do have a hearing, they have someone to lean on who has that expertise. So that would be another sort of piece to that puzzle, I think. And I guess one other thing, we're talking about appointments, and this is council's prerogative, but you are permitted to discuss appointments of non-elected positions in executive session if you'd like. So if that's something that you want to discuss further, whether it's this evening or prior to next week's meeting or whenever you want to do it, just throwing out that option if you don't want to get too into it now.
Super helpful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So are we in agreement that we will move this till next week? We can discuss it prior if we want, but I think that's the plan of action. All right. That being the case, that moves us to number 8, which is
Okay. We've kind of talked this over already, but I move to approve an ordinance of the Borough of Churchill amending the code of the Borough of Churchill by setting the compensation of the borough tax collector at $10 per annum, effective for the term commencing on February 1st, 2021.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion above what has already been discussed? Hearing none, as you see from the borough manager's agenda, this is a roll call.
Okay. Valerie Renthaler,
Yes.
Norma Greco,
Yes.
Matt Castiglia,
Yes.
Adam McDowell,
Yes.
Kevin Collins,
Yes.
Vice President Diane Law,
Yes.
and President Jay Dorn.
Yes. All right, so that passes then without opposition. Moves us on to number 9.
Okay, Mr. President, I move to approve an ordinance of the Borough of Churchill amending section 246-56 of the code of the Borough of Churchill by increasing the sewer usage surcharge from $6 for each 1,000 gallons of sewer/water usage up to $9 for each 1,000 gallons of sewer/water usage.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Valerie, is there any discussion?
Yes, I would like to keep this increase to a minimum. We've increased the millage rate on the property tax, and our residents don't need more fees or more taxes. Krista has done an amazing job of analyzing this. We are in more direct contact with the WPGAA and working out some issues that we have with them that could affect our costs. So I would like to definitely continue on that, which we are doing, but I want to keep this. I know we thought about $10 a gallon or per 1,000 gallon, but if we do it at all, we ought to do it at $8 or $8.50. Excuse me, $8.50. That's my opinion.
Well stated. And I always try to speak last, so does anybody else have any other comments that they'd like to make?
Yeah.
What is this?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to-
Go ahead, Norma.
What is this? How does this affect each resident? What does it amount to? What kind of increase will they see?
Krista, if I can call on you to answer that. You did a really great kind of breakdown before, if you don't mind.
Yeah, not a problem. Norma, so based on 12,000 gallons of usage within a quarter, this an raised to $8.50 would impact that surcharge increase alone would impact the average resident about $10 a month.
Okay, so $9 would be just,
$9 would be $12 a month.
okay, so we're looking at 12. Okay.
Can I just ask for clarification, just so we're 100% clear on the record? Mr. Collins, your motion was to
Approve
increase
it, yeah.
$9.
No, up to $9.
Well, I mean, I think that was phrased that way because if you wanted something less, that's what the motion should read. So if you want to amend your motion
Why don't
to
you amend it to the number that you want.
I apologize, and I would like to go at.
So you would need to move to amend the motion for 850, I believe is what you said.
Yep.
And then I would need a second to that amendment, and then we'd vote on that amendment, and then we can go back to the discussion.
Yeah,
And
so technically,
this takes effect March 1st, correct, Krista?
That is correct.
so technically, Valerie, if you don't mind, I think you seconded that motion. Would you second that amended motion just to make
Yes.
it nice and clean? All right.
All right, so now we have the amended motion on the floor in which it's 850 basic discussion. I will take hold of this basic discussion to move us back into the primary motion. In that this is the amendment of the total amount to what Kevin had spoken about. That's properly at 850, and then so it amends the motion to that number. At this time, I'll just go to a straight vote on it. We're voting on the amended motion right now, unless there's further discussion.
No, I still had some questions, Jay.
Your questions on the amendment, well, let me just be clear. Your questions on the amendment to 850, or questions on the motion about raising the sewer surcharge?
The motion.
Okay, so we have to vote on the amendment first. And then once that's done, we go back into the primary motion, at which time the questions that you have can be answered. So right now, the only thing that we are voting on is amending the motion from $9 to $850.
Understood.
Everybody clear? That being the case, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so the amended motion carries. So now the motion on the table is what was read by Kevin. Don't feel like reading the whole thing. Changing it to $8.50. That is what's on the floor now. We can open it back up for further discussion.
Do we have the second from the first time?
Yeah, that was still open. So basically, just as a matter of Robert's rules, what happens is the motion opens up, a second provides for the motion. When you amend, you do the same thing. You vote on that. You're back inside the original motion. So that's where we are right now. You're on the motion of 850.
Okay. Somebody else had a question first, I think.
I think Matt had a question. Norma had been answered. Matt's question was next on the floor.
Right.
So I guess I am struggling a little bit to understand exactly why we're moving from, where we're at up to 850, kind of what this is covering. I understand that we haven't raised it in a number of years, so certainly just to keep up with rising costs. But I guess maybe I'm out of the loop a little bit, or I'd like some further clarification on how we arrived at the 850 number.
Not a problem. I'm more than happy to discuss that. So essentially, if we do not increase the sewer surcharge this year to that amount, based upon anticipated expenditures, as they've been increasing at approximately 7.8% overall year over year since 2017, we'd be looking at a negative fund balance at the end of 2021. So we technically are not allowed to do. So we need to increase that in order to maintain a positive fund balance and overall a positive bank account that funds all sewer expenses.
Okay, so the other option would be if we don't increase our revenue, we can just decrease our spending. Is that correct?
That of course that is of course an option. The majority of our expenditures are directly to Elkasan. Now, granted, that's a flow through, but we do incur a 3% administrative fee by WPJWA. So that's definitely outside of our control. We can't control how much usage every resident has. When it comes to the other expenditures, such as such as the projects that we have following through the consent order, O&M, and overall repair and maintenance of the sewer system, that those are controllable expenses.
And we had a few last year that were out of the ordinary a little bit. So we had to cover those. We also have a requirement from Alcosan to maintain what, $785,000, Krista, in our budget, or
It's actually greater this upcoming year. It's over 800,000.
Yeah.
Now, granted, like I said, most of that comes through just a pass through WPJWA as a billing agent. But we do have to reserve that amount, and that's actually slightly over what we expect to be billed, but we're required to maintain that in our accounts in case that it would exceed the anticipated amount.
But Matt, you're right on as far as controlling costs. We have to do a more intense review of costs in our sewer budget. And that's why I'm glad of this committee structure that we can do that. So, but again, Krista's done an awful lot of work toward this. I'm reluctant to increase it at all. We increased it, I think, 2 years ago. But I've been convinced that we're going to need an increase this year, anticipating that things will get done. There'll be a better review of the costs, and maybe at some time we can lower that surcharge, although I'm not optimistic about it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, one of the things you find very quickly is the infrastructure costs are really what drive us as local government. I mean, it is a really unfortunate space, and much of it outside of our own control.
Yeah.
Through consent decrees and other mandates. Vice President Lada, you were going to say, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the same question that I did to Ralph in terms of, what we're actually looking at. And I don't know how difficult this is going to be to answer, Krista, but the difference between 8.5 and the 10 that we discussed, where would we make that up?
So the difference between the two generally actually just discusses the ending balance for that fund balance. Really, it's about a difference of about $30,000 that we'd be ending with for the year. Now, what does that mean in the scope of things? Our ending balance potentially, if everything works out to a plan, would be about 121,000 under 850, and would be almost 150,000 under $9. Now that truly is a reserve for projects such as Kevin mentioned, major repairs that were unanticipated. And those, as we've discussed, can range, anywhere from $10,000 to $500,000. It really depends upon just what happens. So this is this is something we can have further discussions on, our fund balance policies, what we all feel comfortable with maintaining. But this would be a moderate number that would cover a major, a slightly major repair without, putting the borough into any sort of debt service.
And do we know if there's any of those major repairs that BELF is anticipating this year?
So there are no direct repairs to the sewer system outside of traditional O&M.
Okay.
The other sewer repairs that we are considering are nurse storm sewers, which are being removed and placed into the general fund for 2021. Okay. So that did help us decrease what the increase to the surcharge would be.
So the fact of the matter is that if something major happened, there's a chance we could have to go to a bank and borrow.
That is absolutely correct.
Well, we have an ending balance on the millage budget that's over around $900,000, and as far as approaching a bank, that's a possibility too. But again, going back, we've raised the millage a half a point. Alcosan's gone up 7%. WPGAA has gone up 5%. We're increasing the surcharge. It's an awful lot to lay on our residents, and
it certainly is.
I really want to. 850 is, from my point of view, is the highest we should go on this surcharge.
I do want to take this moment to say, for the sake of the public, it's very important for people to realize that, yes, we expect to have additional revenue when the Hillwood project is completed. But between now and then, we still have to keep this borough going. And we still have to address all of these expenses without any new revenue. And in fact, we're getting, in some areas, less revenue than we did last year. So I just want to make that statement. None of us wants to raise fees or taxes on anyone, but our responsibility is to keep the borough running.
So I think to Matt's question, the deliberative process of this body has been one that said, what is the least amount, right, that doesn't put the borough and its citizens at risk, right? We asked that out of Krista, we asked that out of Alex. They created multiple proposed numbers that gave us the breakdown of what it looks like for us. And I think we found a good space that didn't allow us to do all the things that we wanted to do, didn't allow us to have the balances that we want to have at the higher level, but also didn't put us in a space of real financial risk. We saw the same thing, quite frankly, in the millage space, just as kind of a secondary note. So at this point, you know, the things that we haven't done in Churchill that, quite frankly, I don't want to be or preside over rather the first time that we have to take out loans because we weren't responsible in the way that we looked at our fiscal projections. You know, it's never been the case, right? We have always been able to, and it has served us well, right? It has served us well, and so this should be no different. So I think it is, you know, it is a number that's necessary. It is not going to be the 10 that came to the table initially. It is not going to be zero increase rather. And so I think the 850 is the space that we can settle. I will ask if there's other discussion. So the motion on the table, just a reminder, is increasing from $6 to $8.50 the sewer surcharge. I'm not going to read the motion as a list again. If there is no other discussion, I would put this to a roll call as well. That requires you. Alex, I'm calling roll call.
I'm just wanted to make sure that no one answered that second part.
No problem.
Diane Law?
I'm sorry, was that me?
Yes.
Yes.
Adam McDowell?
Yes.
Kevin Collins?
Yes.
Matt Castiglia?
Yes.
Norma Greco?
Yes.
Valerie Renthaler?
Yes.
And Mr. Jay Doran, please.
Yes. All right. So that carries. It moves that to the 850 as discussed. This moves us to kind of that round the table Hollywood Square style, what we got going on. Comments that we may have. Start with our staff. Alex, anything to bring to the table today?
No, sir. But other than just to remind people of Wednesday's meeting at 7 will be the same link that we used this evening, so people can watch the Planning Commission meeting. There will be space for public comment, as there is at all public meetings, unless you're in the city of Menneson. But other than that,
I don't know what that part was for, but
the solicitor could comment maybe on that about the need for sunshine law education in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
I think we all appreciate public participation. It's something that the Borough of Churchill has always prided itself on, without any comment about what other municipalities may or may not be doing.
Is that your full comment for the round the table, Mr. Solicitor? Duly noted. Krista, anything your way?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up for the residents that are listening in regards to the sewer surcharge. I just wanted to let you know and reassure you that we as staff are working continuously with WPJWA to not only make sure that you're getting the most clear, transparent billing as possible, but also to make sure that we minimize these increases or any increases moving ahead. It's the last thing that we want to do, or bring this topic to the table in general, but we do want to protect the borough's interests. So we do have a plan moving ahead to make sure we strengthen that relationship to the best for everyone.
Outstanding. Dennis, since you're here, I'll make my regular kind of Felipe comment and then move it over.
I do have just a couple of quick comments or updates for everybody. One item is for the pump station replacement project. The snake study that was required to be performed as part of the PNDI was completed towards the end of last year. We did receive our PNDI waiver. The special study was approved by PennDOT or by DEP on December 21st. And the next series of permits were submitted for the Part 2 permit, as well as the general permits prior to the new year. And we are still on schedule for bidding in spring of 2021 and construction of summer of 2021. And with that, I think that we've discussed in the past, but the borough did receive 2 grants for that, a $400,000 grant from DCED for the small water and sewer program, and an greater than $800,000 grant through the GROW program with Alcosan.
Thank you for that update, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And no snakes?
No snakes.
No
Well,
snakes.
they found gardener snakes,
Yeah,
but not
there's
the
snakes,
endangered
but
ones.
not the endangered snakes.
Not the important one, right.
Here in Churchill, we care about snakes. Let it be said now.
Excuse me 1 second. Kevin, can you recall when we started to try to get grant money for this project? Was it 5 years ago?
Yeah, 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
First announced the
Yeah.
program, maybe even 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm saying that for the benefit of the public, that it takes, people say, oh, get some grant money. This process took us 5 to 6 years to get this money, and is by far the most money the borough's ever gotten in grant money.
Yes, indeed. Having said that, we will roll around the table. Kevin, floor is yours since you were speaking already.
Jay, I'm good. I appreciate the update, Dennis, on the pump station. I think we have to do that at our regular meetings. I'd like to, because we're working toward completion by the end of the year. So that's going to be important. And I think the idea of the committees, I think, is also real important. There's a lot in front of us, and the best way to do it is to discipline on one area and report back to the council. I think that's good.
Outstanding. Moving through my Hollywood squares, Matt, you are up.
I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank the borough staff for the continued efforts to kind of get all this stuff sorted out. And there's a lot coming at us, as well as the residents for their thoughtful comments, and then the other council members, continue the hard work, and let's go for 2021.
Hoorah. Norma?
Yeah, thank you for the committee work. I think that looks great, but did we resolve the Keystone Jordan? We didn't make a decision, did we, on that?
As to who? No, only as to amending it so that we have that kind of deputy position will be available, as it's a nominal that we passed on the ordinance, so that effectively now the tax collector themselves is going to get $10 a year because we're just just sitting there, and then the deputy hopefully will be able to deputize either Jordan or keep. That decision has to be made still.
Okay, I just wasn't sure how we left that. Thank you.
Not a worry. Valerie.
I want to say thank you to a couple people. Alex today for helping me out going through. I did some light reading earlier today. I also want to say thank you to Jay, Matt, Alex, and Krista for our awesome brainstorming session the other day when we were talking about committees. I think that was really helpful as somebody coming in who is new to kind of get the layout of the land. So I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Standing. Adam?
Just thanks for the work on the committees as well. I think consolidating them and, you know, this new structure looks good going forward. And also thanks, Krista, for explaining that about the $10 down to the $8.50 on the sewer surcharge. You answered all the questions that I think everyone else's questions are the questions I had, and you answered them all very well. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, thank you. You know, my comment would be to, first of all, congratulate, you know, council for the work that they put into this. You know, having to absorb like literally thousands of pages of documents and the decisions you have to make to raise the millage, which we don't want, the surcharge, which we don't want. But, you know, the way it breaks down again, like you say, we don't want to get caught at the end, you know, blindsided, but by something that we can't cover and don't have that money. So Krista and Alec for putting that material together, excuse me, showing all those different scenarios and giving council and myself a wide view of how that all looks. And to the residents listening, I got to commend council for the work that they do. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. Madam Vice President?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm in the beginning of this new year. I can't tell you how grateful I am for the staff and what they have done for us in the last 6 months. It can't be said enough. I can't imagine what kind of condition we would be in if we did not have those two people serving us. So and Ralph as well. So I want to extend a real serious thank you for that. Also, I like the committee structure. I think that makes a great deal more sense. And I always want to finish this every month. I'm going to say this. Please, to the members of our community, go to the borough website. There is tremendous information there. A lot of the questions that you may have will be answered there. And I would actually suggest you do the same for the school district. We try really hard to provide that information, and that also can spur questions on your part, you know, to get back to us. So thank you all. Happy New Year.
That leaves once again me between you and leaving the room that you're in, because I used to say going home, and that's just not the case. That being said, a couple things. First of all, I'm going to continue the love fest that seems to be the new year. In just the kind of reality. I think everyone last year was terrible on 1,000 different levels. Very taxing on personal levels for everybody. As a borough, we got everything coming at us. And I know this will be recorded, so maybe someone will watch it outside of the 10 of us on here. But let me just say this. We have an amazing council, right? I have like friends on 3 different councils, right? We have these conversations about like what happened at your council, what happened to your council, right? On our worst day, we are better than other councils' best day. I'm just letting you know that right now. Second thing, our staff. So I am the senior kind of sitting member of council now, which is really, really bizarre to me, just on a side note. I've been on council now for a decade, right? I want Krista and Alex, you know, Ralph obviously has been through this a long time, but you two in particular, I want you to understand the shift that you have made to this borough, both in the accessibility of information, the processing of it. I am really, really thankful to you all for the work that you're doing. So don't let it slip from you. You know, now Dennis, on the other hand, I don't know what we do with that guy. But we have, it's funny because, and I mean this to all of you, that I'll end my love fest and get to some mean things and then head home. There was talk about other, we talk about other engineering firms. Will we go other places? What we do? We are fortunate that we have someone that I know is in our corner. We need someone in our corner. Our engineer is our engineer. There was a question about, the wording that I had chose before. I have no doubt that I have folks who are in the battle for me. And that's the same. This is it. After January, I'm back to my regular self, Gavin. I'm just telling you right now. But I'm still tempted to say something, but I'm not gonna. So I will just stay with again how fortunate we are that we are your first municipality, that we gave you the training ground to become the great solicitor that you are, and we appreciate having you.
I appreciate being had.
And you will be had as long as you would like to be had. I will say that now.
I think that's binding, by the way. That is a eternal contract that cannot be broken. So I'm glad that we are. Alex, you're still recording this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
I will close it out with one last comment. Holiday season goes by, all that. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. The new year is going to be upon us, or is upon us. I think the borough, we need to start thinking about what our role is, as I said before, in the health and welfare of our residents in a different way.
Yeah.
And I just want to leave people with that, because our residents are worried about all kinds of things. They're worried about the development. They're worried about other stuff. I agree with that. We're here to serve them, and we've shown that. And there's a way for us to do this in such a critical space. So I just want to put that out there. Having said that, my dog is now 70 pounds, and I'm going to, just a puppy, man, five months old.
We have no sympathy.
Oh, he's great. He's great. He chills all day. The only thing he does wrong is he eats one table. But that's it. And it's his table. It's like a cheap IKEA table. He's free to eat it. But so I'm going to go see what him and my other 2 70-pounders in my house. So I'll check my daughter and my dog, and that's it. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right.
Second.
That match. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a good
Thank you.
night.
Good night. Good night.
Right.
Bye-bye.